Oh, hey, good morning, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the Rebel News Daily Roundup. I bet you were expecting Ezra Levant since he's been co-hosting, I think, for the last 2, maybe 3 weeks already. This is the Daily Roundup wherein we talk about the news of the day completely unscripted. I'm your host today, Sheila Gunn Reid, and I'm joined by my co-host out on the left coast, Drea Humphrey. Drea, how's it going today? Are you muted, Drea?
Sorry, I was getting my kids settled earlier, but I was going to say It's going good because I heard you have snow, Alexa has snow, and it's really sunny here. So just rubbing that in a bit while it lasts.
That's cruel. Why you got to be like that, Drea? Why do you have to be like that?
It's the vitamin D. It's just doing something to me.
We should tell everybody what we're doing before we get started, and maybe I'll let you do that because I want to talk about a federal court ruling that just came in within the last hour that affects thousands upon thousands of Canadians. An arbitrary act of government is hitting us with an expropriation, confiscation of our property when we haven't done anything wrong. So we'll quickly talk about that. And then there's like a ton of things happening in the world. So I'll let everybody know how they can get involved and support the work that we do. And I'll get ready and collect my thoughts on this federal court ruling.
Absolutely. So we've got a jam-packed live show for you. For those of you who are unfamiliar with the Daily Roundup, it's something we do 5 days a week to go over the latest current affairs. It's unscripted, so you get to really connect with us. And one of the coolest ways you can connect with us is actually become a part of the live show by doing live chat. So if you go on Rumble or Odyssey, I think it's called a Rumble Rant, and you make a donation, which helps keeps the lights on here at Rebel News. You know, we're independent. We don't take a penny from the federal government like 95% of the media in Canada. So if you do a donation, do a live chat, you can comment, weigh in on what we're saying. You can add something. We read that, and it's a really cool way to help Rebel News, but also just get the news out there in general. So, and I think we have an interesting campaign. If you've been following a lot of the pro-Palestine and some of the people who are pro-Hamas, we have a defundhamas.com campaign. So David Menzies and Lincoln went out there, Lincoln J, and we actually had a huge truck. I don't know if we have any footage of it or anything that we can put on. And basically it's calling for people who are here as guests, whether that's on a student visa or visiting. If you are blatantly going out and supporting Hamas, we have a petition set up. If you think that is just unacceptable, where you can sign it, and we're asking for them to be deported. Like I said, they're guests, so you shouldn't be supporting a terrorist movement. So deporthamas.com. I believe we have a .ca URL up as well.
You know what, team in Toronto, why don't we go to David's video on that, because he was in New York last week, I believe it was, and today he's in DC, and then we're taking this thing to Canadian cities, and we've got plans to take it, if we can, to other parts of the world. So let's roll David's video from the streets of Washington, D.C.
Hey folks, David Menzies here along with Lincoln J. We have just landed in the U.S. capital of Washington, D.C., and we're here to send a message, namely, enough is enough. What did we see after the October 7th terrorist attacks in Israel, which killed more than 1,400 people and ended up with more than 200 people being kidnapped and held hostage? Well, we saw thousands of people, including foreign nationals, take to the streets not to condemn Hamas, but to support them. This is completely offside. These are foreign nationals that have been invited into Western democratic cities, and they are going out into the public square and advocating their support for a terrorist organization and horrific terrorist crimes. Well, we're saying this: let's make deportation great again. We want people to sign our petition, which is deporthamas.com. That's deporthamas.com. These ingrates have got to go, and the sooner the better. And these people should be grateful they're not being charged with some kind of law in regard to aiding and abetting terrorist causes. So please go to deporthamas.com, sign the petition. And folks, these trucks, they cost about $2,000 a day. We were earlier in New York City. Today's Washington. We're definitely going to Toronto and Ottawa. We might even go to Europe. If you can chip in a buck or three, we would greatly appreciate your support. So again, deporthamas.com. Sorry, but foreign nationals, many of whom are on student visas, supporting Hamas, supporting terrorism.
So there you have it. Deport Hamas. David Menzies is out on the streets of, well, North America right now with the billboard truck. We don't have an obligation to allow people to support terrorism, particularly when they're non-citizens. So I don't know, maybe consider taking your support of terrorism to a terrorist hotbed and see how it goes for you. I don't know.
Yeah.
Try that. Queers for Palestine.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. I saw it funny. It showed the Queers for Palestine, and then it had cows for McDonald's underneath it.
Yeah, there's one place in the Middle East where they have a pride parade, and it's Tel Aviv. Actually, I think Tel Aviv, might even have two pride parades. We were there once when they were having their pride parade, and it was less over the top, I'll be honest, than some of the Western world stuff that you see. But it is the place in the Middle East where you can be you, I guess. Let's get to this breaking news out of the federal court that just happened about 45 minutes, an hour before we decided to come on air. Not that we decided to come on air. We're scheduled to come on air. Excuse me. I'm very disheveled. Excuse me there. It was frantic for me to get on air. But the federal court of Canada has upheld Justin Trudeau's extra parliamentary, I'll call it, order in council ban of initially 1,500 Canadian long guns. That has had another about 500 models of long guns and shotguns shoehorned into it since then. So it's closer to 2,000. And that happened in May 2020 in the middle of the pandemic restrictions. And Justin Trudeau used the single largest mass shooting in Canadian history in Halifax or near Halifax to justify going after lawful Canadian gun owners. He stood on the graves of other people to attack people who had done nothing wrong. You see, the guns that were used by the maniac who committed that crime, none of them were lawfully obtained. Unlike the guns that Justin Trudeau is going after now. So some 2,000 models, according to Justin Trudeau, so dangerous that they include a 410 bird gun. And I would be remiss to, shoot anything larger than a robin with that. But that was so dangerous. Justin Trudeau considered it an assault style firearm. And so several parties were in court over the course of, really the last 2.5 years, 3 years, to challenge this, to ask for a judicial review, to ask a judge to examine what happened here and say, was it fair? Does it comply with the Charter of Rights and Freedoms? And is the government acting within the authority that the government has? And of those applicants, there were over a dozen applicants, individual applicants involved in 6 applications. One of those applicants was the province of Alberta. And I think that will be particularly interesting later on today, because I wonder if the Alberta government has a fail-safe built into this, because today is our first day back in session. And so we're going to have the throne speech today. And I wonder if there's going to be, and I think there will be, something in there for Alberta gun owners. We already know that Danielle Smith has said to the RCMP, you're not bothering with wasting stretched resources to go after, duck hunters and sports shooters. So the federal court today, actually, Judge Catherine Kane ruled that 6 separate applications for judicial review were unsuccessful in arguing that the federal government did not exceed their statutory authority granted to it under existing laws. So the judge ruled today that the governor and council, so that's basically the mechanism for the order in council, to reclassify these guns willy-nilly is reasonable, that the government did not subdelegate its authority to prescribe firearms as prohibited. So one of the challenges was you've given this power to the RCMP basically to decide what guns are prohibited and not. And how do we hold RCMP bureaucrats to account? This should be something that sits within the parliament so that people like me can say, hey, remember that time you said that gun I bought completely legally was illegal overnight and I woke up in the morning, like the next day, a criminal? I'm never voting for you again. Like, you don't have the opportunity to do that when some faceless RCMP bureaucrat is the pencil pusher making the decisions over whether or not you get to own your property. And they also said there was no breach of the duty of procedural fairness in the decision of the government to create these regulations. So the argument is we're being treated unfairly. We lawfully obtained these guns. We did everything right. We didn't commit a crime with them. So why are we the ones paying the price for the actions of a maniac somewhere else? And the judge ruled that actually the government never exceeded its statutory authority. So sorry, too bad. And basically upheld the RCMP and the Fed's extra parliamentary authority to basically do whatever they want to you. And they don't have a duty to be fair about it. And I should note to you that these guns that Justin Trudeau just had to stand on the graves of murder victims to ban, those will remain in the hands of Canadians until at least, and I suspect it'll be longer because if there's a change in government, this is just going to be heave-ho right out the door. But those will remain in the hands of lawful Canadian gun owners until at least October 2025. So they banned these things. It'll be 5 years from the time they were so deadly they had to get off the streets immediately without ever putting this before Parliament. They're so deadly that they've had to kick the can down the road now twice. Because you've banned something from me. Now you have to confiscate it from me, but you should be compensating me for this thing you are taking from me. And they can't figure out how to do the compensation part of confiscation. So it's so deadly that the government hasn't bothered to figure out how to do any of this. And they're leaving him in the hands of Canadians for 5 years. So even the government doesn't believe that these firearms are deadly. I mean, they really aren't. They're not really the things being used in the commission of crimes. Illegal handguns trafficked across the border are, because Justin Trudeau won't do anything about tightening up the border. But yeah, they're so deadly that I get to keep them in the gun safe for 5 full years.
Exactly. And just wait to see what happens. I mean, and it's not surprising to me, you hit it on the nail in many ways, but the RCMP being charged of this, that's the Fed's RCMP, and the whole waiting 5 years, it's all just sort of a smokescreen. I remember them really looking at that maniac who did the mass shooting, pretended to be an officer and shot all those people in Nova Scotia. And they used that as though it's some excuse to go ahead and ban law-abiding guns. But he got those guns, like you said, across the border. They were illegally obtained. He wasn't even supposed to have guns. So meanwhile, while they act like they're doing all this without even really taking these guns off of out of homes for 5 years, they're not cracking down on where they should be. And that's where it's really misfortunate. And that's where the actual main murders are happening when it comes to guns.
And we should make the distinction. Regular RCMP officers, I think by and large, hate the idea of kicking in the doors of their friends and neighbors to confiscate their property, when a lot of RCMP that I know, and I think many of you out there know, are gun owners just like us, and a lot of them are hit by this. It's the pencil-pushing bureaucrats in the upper echelons of the RCMP, in a cubicle somewhere, who get to make decisions on behalf of the rest of the RCMP, and it is then your local cop who becomes the face of this, and he ends up being the bad guy when he wants none of this. We should make that distinction. But also, we should remember that Brenda Lucki, the RCMP commissioner at the time, collaborated with the Liberals to strategically release the makes and models of the firearms used in that mass shooting so that it would be easier for the Liberals to politically ban them. It would be more expedient. They would say, oh, look, see these guns? These are the ones killing people. So we have to get those out of the hands of the people who are completely different than the madman who did all the killing. She did that. She collaborated with the Liberals and politically contaminated her legacy. And now she's out the door.
She's gone.
Anyway, if people want to sign our,
to see how Danielle Smith handles this, for sure.
Yeah, you know, I'm very curious about that. I was just going to say that if people want to sign our petition, sending a message to the feds to focus on the bad guys and not your local sports shooter, gun aficionado, and in some instances, your local cop who's down at the gun range with you. If you want to send the feds a message, you can go to handsoffourguns.ca, sign that petition. I would love to drop that off to our public safety minister, maybe our commissioner of the RCMP, considering the extreme powers that the RCMP have in banning guns. But yes, moreover, to your point, Drea, I'm very curious to see how the province of Alberta reacts, because Danielle Smith has made it her mandate to fight with the feds on issues that affect Albertans, especially when she thinks the feds are both overstepping their authority and stomping all over Albertans' rights. So I'm curious. Our speech from the throne, I think, is 3 p.m. Alberta time, 5 o'clock for you and the rest of the world. By the rest of the world, I mean Toronto. And I know that we will be rebroadcasting the speech from the throne here on Rebel News. So I'm almost certain, given what happened today, that there will be something in there for law-abiding Canadian gun owners. We remain the sanest jurisdiction in this country, with, I think, Saskatchewan just neck and neck with us.
Close behind. All right, now we're on to
one of the worst things I've ever seen. This, insane video out of Dagestan. What is that? A former Soviet republic. Pro-Hamas rioters storm an airport in search of Jews. They heard that this plane had landed, I think, from Israel. And I think they had heard through the grapevine that some people who were fleeing the war were landing there. Look at this. Like, this is World War Z.
This is just so despicable. They're hunting. They're hunting the Jews. Yeah.
They're hunting. This is a pogrom. And so look at, and where are Russian officials? Like, I'm reliably informed you can't get away with all that much in the name of protesting and rioting in Russia. I recall when they held those guys from Greenpeace for quite some time after they stormed an oil platform, offshore oil platform. And I can't even believe what I'm seeing here. Like, look at this mob. Like I said, this is like something from World War Z, where the zombies are just piling over all the barriers and climbing walls and stuff in search of, a chance to eat a living human being. And instead, this is maniacal people in search of Jews.
Where is Putin on this? I thought Putin don't play. Look at this.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. And there's multiple angles of this, right?
It's from all over the place. Ezra made a joke that in Borat, in the movie Borat, there was a joke about, like checking the airplane engine for the Jew. We just watched that. Like it was a joke. But
not anymore.
This is imagine being on that airplane, being a Jew on that airplane, and there's a bloodthirsty mob outside.
And again, you said fleeing the war. Let's not forget that part too. So, what I thought, it's usually there's a lot of refugees, I'm assuming, in that community as well. And so you have people fleeing what's happening there, or at least they think so. And this is how they're going to be greeted. It's terrifying. It's just so shocking to me. And I don't know why I get surprised about this, because we even saw it happen with the unvaccinated, but it's just so shocking how fast we see society dehumanize people. And with the Jews, it's happening all over again. I see memes where it's like, we need to clean, let's get clean. And they're throwing the Jewish flag in the garbage and things like that. It's just, have we not learned as humans yet about that? We just snap into place and most of us fall into it. It's really disheartening.
And just the level of bloodlust that you see here, like, it's astounding. Like Ezra said in one of his tweets, what do you think Intifada meant? When they are out on the streets around the world crying for an intifada, which is a violent uprising. This is it. We didn't have to wait very long to see the intifada, did we? In places that seem slightly unexpected, but really, is it? Is it all that unexpected? And then there's this crazy video, and moreover to the bloodlust, when it goes unsatiated because they can't get onto the plane to attack the Jews after the pilot told them, doesn't matter what's happening outside, do not get off this plane. They turned their ire on the cops. I think we have images of that too. Do we have? Yeah. So what's the moral of the story here? If you're a Jew, don't expect the police to help you.
Yeah. Look at that.
It's like a BLM riot.
Well, that's why I did a tweet like that. Like, why are so many of these pro-Palestine videos giving off BLM vibes? And now it's really doing that, but you could see it right away starting to happen. And it's like, what's going on here? Yeah. And I think if you look at when Ezra made that in Intifada, you can look at what they're saying. Do we have that video where it shows what they're actually saying there? There's subtitles on there too, because that's really concerning as well. It's really short. I think it's like 20 seconds or not. But yeah, it's just the admission that they're coming there hunting the Jews.
Какой целью сообщил, братишка?
Я за еврейцами.
За еврейцами?
Я только убить на крови.
Ты чем будешь убивать их?
Ножом.
Да, покажи нож.
У меня наркотик.
Ты зачем сюда пришел?
А?
Ты зачем? Из чего? Ты камни кидал там?
Нет.
За еврейцами, да, вы пришли?
Да.
Все, тигры же есть. До утра здесь стойте, поняли?
Хорошо.
Все, давай. Какой целью сообщил, братишка?
There you go. The next generation right there.
Well, but that, I mean, again, that's happening in Gaza, which I don't want to say it's expected, but yeah, it's expected. But for this to be happening there in Russia is quite concerning. In Gaza, this is a part of their education system, right? To dehumanize the Jews, hunt the Jews. This is a thing. Like, they want to raise little future Jew killers.
Right. It's noble to hunt the Jews.
Right. Well, it's a career aspiration. If you want to be able to provide for your family, it's something you might consider in Gaza, because the Hamas officials have so depressed the economy that they have this desperate generation of people who see it not only as a moral thing to abduct and kill Jews, but also a way to ensure the financial security of your family through their pay for slay policies. So they take the aid money given to Hamas to provide all manner of infrastructure and necessities to the people. Hamas does not provide those things. And instead, they use it as part of their pay for slay budget. And then they say to Israel, okay, you give us water. You give us electricity. You give us internet for free.
You give us the fuel to, make our weapons against you stronger.
Yeah. And the water pipes that we'll dig up so that we can make missiles and launch them into Sderot. It boggles the mind. Just the terror on that plane must have been unbelievable. Anyway, let's hit an ad break because we can talk about this on the other side of the ad break, because there's now what we saw in this Russian locale is starting to concern officials in other parts of the world. So let's hit an ad break and then go to that.
David Menzies for Rebel News here in downtown Toronto. And I got to tell you, folks, next March 23rd to 30th to be precise, we are going on a Caribbean cruise. Can you imagine that? And a lot of your favorite Rebels will be there, such as Sheila Gunn Reeds. We got Alexa Lavoie, the big boss man himself. Of course, he'll be there. Ezra Levant. And how about this? How about this for the cherry on the sundae? Tamara Leach, Canada's #1 freedom fighter. She'll be on that boat too. And look at the itinerary. We're going to be going to Half Moon Cay in the Bahamas, and then we're going to jazz it up in Ocho Rios, Jamaica, and then there's Georgetown in the Cayman Islands, and finally Cozumel, Mexico. Can you imagine that? If you want more details in terms of getting aboard the ship, go to rebelnewscruise.com. That's rebelnewscruise.com. All the details are there, the departure dates, the costs, and you know what? This is not just a fun-filled getaway. This is a way in which Rebel News raises some revenue. Unlike the mainstream media, we don't receive a nickel of government funding, nor would we take it if ever offered. So it's win-win. Enjoy yourself in the Caribbean and Mexico, and also support your favorite online news channel. So that's rebelnewscruise.com. I hope to see you aboard.
Hey, Ben Shapiro here. This November, the Wilberforce Project is bringing me to Canada. If you want to fight the woke machine destroying families, join me in Calgary for my talk, hosted by the Wilberforce Project. Go to benshapirolive.ca for info and tickets.
Come on out November 25th. It's all aboard the Freedom Train in Niagara-on-the-Lake. You can check Rebel News for updates and also the Freedom Passport site.
Tamara Leach, who led the Truckers Convoy, will be sharing the stage with some of the finest international recording artists, like the Chops Horns from New York City, who's played with Alicia Keys, Stevie Wonder, the Rolling Stones, and many more. Plus New World Sun, just off a European tour, and the legendary R&B master, Leroy Emanuel. Get on the Freedom Train with Tamara Leach. Saturday, November 25th at Niagara-on-the-Lake Central Community Center, 680 York Road. Get your tickets today at freedompassport.ca. The Freedom Train is coming. Know your rights. Know your freedoms.
All right. Let's see how much of this we can get to. I know we've got a ton of Israel stuff on the board, but there are other things happening in this country that I would like to talk about as well. So let's see. I might skip some of this, team in Toronto. I know you've meticulously prepared a lot of it, but we are already halfway through the show. Now we've got some spillover from the bizarre scenes that we saw in Russia. We've got this clip from GB News. So that is the conservative network in the UK. Let's show that clip, please. Yes, it is. So I guess Olivia's having trouble finding the clip. But now we've seen, maybe we can just show the tweet, fears for British Geos. after mass mob targets airport passengers in terrifying footage in Russia. So I guess, are we just going to see this in Russia? Again, like as Drea points out, Putin's pretty tough on protests, but we're not seeing a ton of crackdown on what we saw there. So is this going to happen now in Moscow? Is this going to happen maybe in London? Well, we've seen some of that actually, since Ezra and Lincoln are currently in London for this week. So we've got actually a video of some spillover of some of this badness into London. Let's show Lincoln's footage. So Lincoln's footage is police and pro-Palestinian protesters, I would say pro-Gaza. Because I think these people are definitely not in favor of the Palestinian people by propping up their government. So I would describe this as pro-Gaza protesters getting shovey on the streets of London. They're calling for a Gaza ceasefire. Now, of course, they want a ceasefire when Israel's going to retaliate, but not before, right? Anyway, let's show Lincoln's footage here.
Step back! You step back! Step back! You're my jacket, bro! Calm down, calm down. Get away. Get back! Get back! Get back! Stay back! Holy shit. Fucking intense.
This is nuts.
That's crazy.
Man.
Lincoln's right in the middle of that. That could go real bad real fast. Let us recall that the British police are generally unarmed.
Yeah, they've got their little batons and things like that and their kind words, but wow. Yeah, and the sheer amount like of how many people versus the police, like they are by far outnumbered if something really does get out of hand there. But yeah, Lincoln was right there in the mix. Kudos to Lincoln and Rebel News for having our boots on the ground to show you what's happening like that. Wow. Oh,
yeah.
Man.
Yeah. And as Lincoln said, those protests went on like all day from day till night. We've got another video from Lincoln. A pro-Gaza protester was detained by police. According to a witness, it was because of swearing. Now, it is the London police. So I've seen them confiscate knitting needles from old ladies and brag about taking like gardening tools from people on the street. So it's believable that it was swearing, but I doubt that in this instance, that's what it was for. Let's show that.
Free. If I'm right, you can let him go. If I'm right, you can let him go. No, bro. You might as well just let him go.
Just walking, and then they grabbed us for Section 5, apparently swearing.
For swearing?
Yeah, just for swearing once as well.
You think they're going to take him away, or?
Yeah, they're going to take him.
Oh.
Who needs a bar of soap, Grandma?
Free Palestine, you get me?
Do you think it was swearing, Drea?
No, I don't think so. Remember, it's like Ezra always tells us, they don't have to tell you the truth in these settings. They can lie. It's not illegal to do so. So no, I don't think it was swearing. Oh, man.
Well, and yeah, it was like the fellow protester saying it was swearing. So
yeah. True, right? I wasn't sure.
Again, though, I'm torn because the London police are, their public order units are, I mean, they do that kind of stuff, but I don't think that that's what was happening there. Like, based on what we just saw happening in the streets of London, do you really think they're making arrests because of swearing? Like, do you really think you have the amount of police to make arrests to deal with curse words on the street in a protest that was that volatile? Where they're sending, it sounds like flashbangs to disperse the crowd is what that noise I thought I heard.
And the friends seem awfully calm. I feel like if your friend was getting arrested for swearing, you'd be making a pretty big deal about that.
I'd be swearing.
Like, oh, yeah, it's swearing. Yeah, you'd be swearing. You'd be swearing.
I'd be swearing so that you weren't in jail alone.
Yeah. And you mentioned like the pro-Gaza thing. I just want to say, like, I don't know if this is across Canada or whatnot, but in Vancouver, they actually say like all out for Gaza. So it's a very, very accurate descriptor. They are pro-Gaza.
Yeah. Because again, I reiterate, if you're for the Palestinian people, you need to be against Hamas, and the government there. And the government of Gaza is Hamas. I've seen some very promising steps towards peace in other parts of Israel, peace through shared economic interests, which I think is normally the way those things break out. It's how peace broke out in the Middle East with Donald Trump, between Israel and the UAE, these shared economic interests.
Well, even before then, trading your goods, how peace came.
Yeah, I mean, that's how there are these economic zones between Israel and Jordan, where workers come from both sides and they work in these economic zones. There are these industrial parks where people from the Palestinian-controlled territories are coming into Israel, into what would be described as a settlement, which is literally just a town where the UN says Jews shouldn't live. And they go there and they work and they make more money than they do in the Palestinian-controlled areas. And people get to know each other in these places, because what I think a lot of people don't realize is you can have an Israeli town and a Palestinian town, and they're right across the street from each other, like right across the highway, and they never mix. There are your stores and their stores, and they have their church and you have your church, and they have their language and you have your language. They have their schools, and like it's like you just never mix. It's unnecessary. And they've constructed it that way. Both sides have done that so that they never actually have to talk to each other. But then they make these industrial parks where everybody works for the same business, and they have like days off for Ramadan, and they have days off for the never-ending Jewish holidays. And so then they actually get to know each other, and it was fostering peace. And what is happening in Gaza is undoing much of that good work, and that is the real sadness, because in other parts of Israel, where terrorism and extremism doesn't have the same foothold, it's damaging that. It's damaging the way forward.
Yeah. Wasn't SodaStream one of those companies where everybody was getting along, or was it SodaStream?
Yeah, it was. It was. SodaStream was until Western, what the BDSniks, I'll call them, the boycott, divestment, and sanctions people in the Western world on mostly university campuses, they said, boycott SodaStream because it's in an occupied territory, or it's in a settlement, or I forget what exactly. And so SodaStream, this place where, again, Palestinians and Israelis were working in harmony. And if you look on the SodaStream box, it actually says that, made by people working together in peace and camaraderie, or something like that. They actually, because of just the controversy, they moved their factory. So good job, BDSniks. You unemployed a bunch of Palestinians.
Yeah.
But yeah, we've toured these factories. We've spoken to the Palestinians who work there, and we've seen the efforts that they go through to make sure that everybody is accommodated. It's really it's wonderful, but again, being undone by terrorism. Yeah. Okay, we've got a video from Ezra from London. There's a lot of rage aimed at McDonald's. At one point, I was worried the restaurant would be stormed, Ezra writes. He's very concerned about his fast food companies. But the reason that the ire was directed at McDonald's is because McDonald's in Israel is kosher, and they have been feeding the troops. And David Menzies also ate at a kosher McDonald's, and his sadness was palpable. You can't get cheese on your burger. Anyway, yeah, you can't even get your like latte. You have to go to a different side. Like there's a divider. If you got for me, I'm like coffee, 1 cream, so I don't get a stomach ache. But I can't get it from. I can order it there, but I have to walk around to get it from the other side because you can't mix your dairy with your meat, so it has to become a separate kitchen and everything. It's a highly complicated, but they were feeding the troops because they have these kosher kitchens. Great. Nope. Not according to the pro-terrorism people. Let's show Ezra's video. From the river to the sea. Did you see that?
Yeah. Another call for genocide. Don't survive. As if the workers in there have anything to do with it.
Right. It's gross. Like, these are minimum wage workers. What are you doing? Like, what are you doing? And by the way, the stupidity of those signs and the Israeli occupation. Israel's not in Gaza. They gave the Palestinians Gaza. They gave it to Hamas. They're not there. These people don't even know what they're protesting at this point.
It's just, and like you said, from the river to the sea. I don't think many people even know what they're saying when they're chanting that at these protests, especially, Western useful idiots that are chanting it or holding signs about it. It's a literal call for genocide, just out there, blatantly.
Yeah. Ethnic cleansing. It's ethnic cleansing. From the river, Jordan, to the sea, the Mediterranean Sea, Palestine will be free of Jews, is what they mean. Yeah, of Jews. We've got another video from Ezra. Black flag flown across the street from 10 Downing Street. Is that the ISIS flag or Islamic Jihad?
So my understanding, and I don't know if I'm correct, that this is a flag that, of course, has been used by terrorists, but also is just used by other Islamic groups. But yeah, it's concerning. So I tried looking it up before, and of course I can't read what it actually says. It's going around in green as well.
If somebody knows, tell us in the comments. Doesn't look like the ISIS flag. I don't know what that flag is. It sounds like Ezra doesn't know
Hamas flag. Right? It looks like what has been sort of called a Hamas flag because supporters of Hamas have waved it around, but it doesn't have the Hamas emblem on it. So, yeah, if anybody knows, this is a good time to join the chats on Rumble. Yeah, so there it is in green right there. And when
so that's the
green.
Olivia points out this is Toronto. It's in green there.
Okay. And so when it's in green, it looks a lot like Saudi Arabia's flag, but it doesn't have the sword underneath. So, yeah, really got to do some research on these flags. But I think the bottom line is it is typically like seen by supporters of like Hamas terrorists. So, yeah.
Now, in sad news, one of the
very sad.
most iconic images of the October 7th attack that we saw coming out was of this young lady, 23 years old, German-Israeli tattoo artist who was at that Peace Music Festival, who was paraded through the streets of Gaza after being kidnapped, has been found dead. That's Shani Luik. I hope I'm saying that right.
I think it's Loke. Yeah.
Loke. Her death has been confirmed, and it sounds like she's been beheaded. They didn't find her body. They found skull bone, a piece of her skull.
Yeah.
And this the despair of these families, like to be relieved that your daughter's dead instead of suffering at the hands of some ISIS terrorist or ISIS. I'm sorry. Some Hamas terrorist, but really what is the tangible difference? That you're relieved. She's no longer suffering, knowing what you know about the suffering that the abducted women went through. I mean, it's just unimaginable what these families are experiencing. And she was a peace activist.
Yeah. Well, a lot of them, it was sort of a peace music festival. I mean, these were very loving people that were slaughtered, over 250 of them. And the poor mom was holding on to hope because, she obviously saw those videos circulating, but somebody used, or allegedly or reportedly used, the Shani's credit card at some point. So she was really holding on for hope that, maybe her daughter was still alive, but it's confirmed they found part of the skull. And like you said, she's taking relief in that it appears she was shot in the head. So she's saying, at least she didn't suffer long or what have you, but we don't know what happened before then. It's just so disgusting. The images that, it's like you said, that is really the image of what happened there, that people are just pushing aside. And days after, even in Vancouver, like right after, people were like, yeah, like this is liberating, this is so they had smiles on their face, at the pro-Gaza protest.
They were jubilant. It was a celebration. What really struck me, what was the thing that I read, and it was a list of things and that's when it really hit home for me, just how catastrophically devastating this has been for a country that really values its children. Because Israel is a very young country. It's bucking the trend of the rest of the Western world in having a declining young population. Like, people in Israel have lots of children. Even secular Jews have a lot of children. They value their children. Yeah. And what struck me was when they were like listing the things that as a civilian you could do, or if you weren't a reservist, what you could do to help. And they were listing, like you can donate blood, you could do this, do that. And it was the donations, they were calling for donations of breast milk. And that was what really struck me, how many mothers were missing.
Yeah. Oh, man.
How many children were suffering without their moms because their mothers were abducted or killed by these Hamas terrorists, that they were concerned about the nutrition of the babies. And I hadn't even thought of that. Like the amount of teeny tiny babies who don't have their moms. That was the thing that really was like, holy heck, what an absolute act of evil, like a catastrophic act of evil in a biblical way. That we're not even going to really fully comprehend the impact it has on the psyche of Israelis for a very long time.
Yeah, something I haven't been there, but something I didn't realize that's become very clear to me is just, how prevalent bomb shelters are and stuff, and how it must be just different living, so close to people, want to actually just wipe you out and can happen at any moment. And that's something that really stood out to me, that I guess I just wasn't really aware of.
It's everywhere, right? Like even places that are far away, nothing's far away from anything in Israel. Like the whole country is close quarters. So like a top to bottom, like from Edmonton to Calgary, maybe even not that far. And in some instances from like Edmonton to suburbia across. So when the UN says, oh, you need to give back that territory, well, giving back that territory will spell the end of the state of Israel, because they need to hang on to land strategically, right? You could be overrun before you could even muster a defense of your country if you start giving back territory. But the idea that a bomb could happen at any moment is everywhere. You're sitting in the hotel by the pool and you look and you're like, oh, there's the bomb shelter room. So you can see the fortified outside and you're like, oh, that's where it is. In Sderot, because I've been in Sderot, it's like 900 meters from the border with Gaza, and every bus shelter is a bomb shelter because they don't have time to get home to the bomb shelters. Over top of the playgrounds is like missile tarps. Because, and there's not a lot of playgrounds there, because why would you let your kids play outside? It's just, it's a different way of living when you have to live right next door to people who want to butcher you in front of your children. Let's hit an ad break on that horrifying note, because you've got some coverage of the Bring Them Home Now protest in Vancouver, people calling for the release of some 200 hostages being held in Gaza. And I think one of the most frightening things, I think, for Israelis, and we'll talk about it after the break, is the division of these hostages based on their citizenship. It's for release. But we'll talk about that after the break. Let's hit the ad break and then we'll go to that.
Do you want to start feeling like your pre-COVID self again? You're not alone. The wellness company's Spike Support Formula is an all-natural supplement to help people do just that. It was created by cardiologist Peter McCullough and his expert team of doctors to help the people experiencing effects from COVID and the you-know-what.
Go to twc.health/rebel today.
I'm Dr. Peter McCullough. After years, I'm finally coming to Canada.
I'm a practicing internist and cardiologist. I've trained in epidemiology.
The FDA wanted to block the Pfizer dossier for 55 years.
50% of the lives at that time could have been saved. We were at about 250,000 deaths.
Red Deer, Thursday, November 9th. Get tickets at canadiansfortruth.ca. See you Thursday, November 9th.
Okay, let's just touch on this real briefly, because I think we should talk a little bit about Matthew Perry to just end on a light note, but also not really, because he died, but it's not as bad as terrorism, I guess, all things considered. So, Drea, I'll let you set this up.
Yeah, so yesterday there was a Bring Them Home Now rally in Vancouver at the Vancouver Art Gallery. The Vancouver Art Gallery has been a very popular spot about the conflict, so both pro-Gaza and now we're seeing pro-Israel, if you will, protests. But basically there's over 230 hostages that are still being held captive. So you can see them holding the image of them, the signs on them. One of the questions in a report that's coming up, which you will see at CanadaStandsWithIsrael.com, I asked them about how they feel about seeing the videos, which there are too many to count, unfortunately, of people tearing down those very same images that they have from polls and things like that in various countries. And so a lot of them had things to say about that. They all wanted to express that their hearts go out for any innocent civilian, but they want them returned. And it's like you said, Sheila, the whole returning based on dual citizenship, it's not good enough. They want them all back. They want them back now. They don't trust the videos of, the few hostages or whatever who appear to be treated well. I don't know how you can be treated well by your kidnapper. But yeah, and some of them were directly connected to people who are missing and kidnapped. So yeah, that's them walking around downtown Vancouver with the signs and the images, and yeah.
I'm trying to remember. This sort of reminds me of, I'm trying to remember. There was attempted, Olivia, maybe you can bring this up. It wasn't an attempted hijacking. It was a hijacking. And I want to say it was by Iranians 30, 40 years ago.
Okay.
The stewardess on the plane she died helping children flee the plane, but she hid the passports of the Israelis on the plane.
Oh, wow.
And because she knew that dividing the passengers by their nationality would spell the death of those Israelis.
Wow.
And I think that's what we're seeing right now. When you see these negotiations with the Western world to get their people home, and I understand it, I really do. But look at the flip side. What you're doing is weeding everybody else out, and you're leaving just the Israelis behind. And you know what's going to happen to them. Yeah, here you go. She was a 22-year-old flight attendant working on Pan Am Flight 73 when it was hijacked by terrorists in a layover in 1986. I got it wrong. I said it was the Jews, but what she did was she hid the Americans on the flight. And now I remember why this stuck out in my mind, because I was like, she hid the Americans. And right now we're identifying the Americans to bring them home.
Right.
And she died. She died shielding children. Yeah.
And you mentioned Iranians in this case. I should say there were quite a few Iranians who came out in support of the bringing home now.
Because the Persians hate the Iranian government.
I said Persians and they told me Iranians. So
you know what? Whatever. You know what? Yeah. I'll take their specifications on that. But we know, especially very much so from David's coverage of the Persian community in the GTA, they hate the Islamic regime of Iran. That's why they're here. And of course.
I said Persians, they said Iranian community, but they said, that Iran and Israel, they call them countries of peace that need to be freed from the Islamic regime. So, I guess in our area, Vancouver, there's a lot of that. I don't know if that's happening across Canada, but it was nice to see.
Yeah, I'm very sorry I got that story wrong, but I remembered why I remembered it. And I was like, by not dividing the Americans out, I think she stopped the slaughter of Americans. And right now we're doing completely the opposite. We're dividing the Americans out. I understand why the American government is doing that. They have an obligation to get their people home. They absolutely do. But what happens when we've distilled the hostage situation down to just single citizenship Israelis?
Yeah.
It's going to be very bad, I think, unless the IDF
hopefully not
frees them as they have been doing. So we had some good news today. Yankee posted it in the chat about an IDF soldier, a girl. She was recently freed. I'm shocked to find out she's still alive. I think the majority of the hostages are probably not alive, but this is an IDF private. She was abducted by Hamas on October 7th. She was released, and she's home with her family. My God, this poor girl.
Was she released or freed? Two different things.
Released during IDF ground operations. So I think the IDF went and killed her captors.
Wow. Oh my goodness. The family must just be like, oh, I can't imagine being the family, like how that would
wonderful
feel.
news. It's a little bit of goodness in all the badness. Let's jump
Let's end
ahead.
on Matthew Perry, because you've got some funny insight on this that I didn't know, and nothing's funny about Matthew Perry dying. Okay. But
So nothing's funny about Matthew Perry dying, but Matthew Perry was in some instances a national hero, and many of you might not know why. So let's go to Justin Trudeau's tweet about Matthew Perry. So star of Friends, a show I never watched, but I'm reliably
Very
informed
casually.
that people like him. Yeah, people like him. He was Chandler Bing. Was that who he was?
Yep.
Okay, so he was on Friends, the iconic show from the 90s and early 2000s, whatever. So Justin Trudeau, as when all high-profile Canadians die, he had to weigh in. But what people don't know is that Matthew Perry knew Justin Trudeau when they were youngsters. I think they went to school together. So this is Justin Trudeau. Matthew Perry's passing is let's put that back up because we need to read this. Matthew Perry's passing is shocking and saddening. I bet you won't. I'll never forget the schoolyard games we used to play. And I know people around the world are never going to forget the joy he brought them. Thanks for all the laughs, Matthew. You were loved and you will be missed. I'm sure that's true. And I'm also sure that Justin Trudeau will never forget the schoolyard games that he used to play with Matthew Perry, because Matthew Perry once described those schoolyard games to a late night talk show host. Let's go to that, please, if you wouldn't mind.
All right, sir. I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm well, thank you.
You're a fellow Canadian. Will you consider yourself fully Canadian?
I'm sort of half.
Half
You're
Canadian.
Half? Yeah. Well, I'm half and half. Well, perfect. Get
Between
over
us,
here.
we make a full American.
Yes, that's right.
Yes.
Not a Canadian.
And you, by the way, this is an interesting thing I learned about you. I did not know this. The current Prime Minister of Canada, Justin Trudeau, somebody you went to school with.
I did. I was a couple of years ahead of him.
Okay. How old were you at this time?
5th grade, so whatever age you are in 5th grade.
Okay. And do you remember 10 probably? Do you remember him around school?
I do. I have a story about him that I'm not proud of.
What? Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, yeah.
I was reminded of this. My friend Chris Murray, who was also in the 5th grade in Canada, reminded me that we actually beat up Justin Trudeau.
You beat him up?
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah. I don't know.
The two of you beat him up?
We both beat him up. And
Schoolyard
I
games.
think he was excelling in a sport that we weren't as. So it was pure jealousy.
I see.
And we beat him up.
And his dad was the Prime Minister of Canada?
His dad was the Prime Minister
at that time,
Canada.
right?
I don't think that's the reason we beat him up. I think he was the only kid in school that we could beat up.
Don't they have Secret Service there protecting the children of their Prime Ministers?
They didn't.
They didn't? Wow. Because that would never happen to Barron Trump. You'd be in the stockade right now. You'd be
It's true.
You'd be in Russia somewhere.
Yeah, it's true. But I'm not bragging about this. This is terrible. I was a stupid kid, and I didn't want to beat him up. In fact, I think at one point I tried to turn it into love play.
Well, he is a handsome guy.
Yeah, boy, is he ever.
Yeah.
But I think it was rather instrumental in him going to such great heights and becoming the Prime Minister.
You feel that way?
Yeah, I think it was, I think he said, I'm going to rise above this.
Uh-huh.
And I'm going to become Prime Minister.
I'm going to destroy those two boys.
Yeah, exactly.
Perry and Murray, who
rose
beat
above
me.
both of us,
Yeah, wow, that's something else. That's really, do you ever have contact with him, and have you discussed this?
No, I feel shame. I don't want to think about it.
Hi, I'm Jimmy Kimmel.
That's good.
Of
Schoolyard
course, Trudeau
games, hey?
tried to use that for clout. Yeah, schoolyard games. I'll never forget. We were just the best of buds. Like, he's such a liar so many times. I mean, has he not seen that video?
The only person in the school that Matthew Perry could have beaten up was Justin Trudeau. He needs a stamp. Wait, before we move on, speaking of people on stamps, I know that I'm springing this on people, but oh my goodness, Buffy St. Marie. Drea, are you following this with Buffy St. Marie?
It's so funny you asked that. It was a family friend's birthday, and I literally just heard about it. I had not. So It's on my list to look into, but we were talking about it. But
I'll
this
give you
is
the
nuts.
Coles Notes version.
Yes.
I'll give you
The
the
brother-
Coles Notes
okay.
version.
Yeah.
Okay. So, for those of you who haven't seen this, I am going to do something I never do, but I have to do it. CBC did a good job on a story. Okay. Go
once in a
to the fifth. Go to the. You know what? It's still not worth the $1.6 billion a year that they get to do one good story a year. But I also like when my political adversaries are just like eating themselves alive. I'm like, okay, I'll just lean up against the wall and watch it happen. So Buffy St. Marie, Canadian icon. When you know it, probably not even Canadian at the end of the day. Why? So she's got the Order of Canada, like the highest order of the land that you can give a Canadian. She's not Canadian. My friend Lise calls her Bluffy St. Marie.
Bluffy, I love that. That's good. Bluffy St. Marie.
Buffy St. Marie is an Italian-American malingerer from outside of Boston known as Beverly Santa Maria. And everything that we know about her upbringing is a lie. So, and these are stories that she has repeatedly told on video, on audio, in writing, in at least 2 authorized autobiographies. She was born in the town of Wakefield, Massachusetts, as I think it was the 48th baby that year. And how do I know that? Because CBC went to Wakefield and got her birth certificate.
Good on them.
She has repeatedly said, I never had a birth certificate. I don't know where I'm from. I was given up for I was born on the Saskatchewan Piepot Reserve. I was given up for adoption. I may have been born out of wedlock. I was given up for adoption. I was adopted into this white family outside of Boston. And my adoptive mother was Micmac. She's not. They actually
the adopted mother's not?
No, she's not adopted at all.
Oh my gosh, what's going on? And didn't the brother out her or something?
He tried. This speaks to, and this is my personal opinion here, how evil Buffy St. Marie is. Sorry, Beverly Santa Maria. They changed their name they're so Italian that they changed their name from Santa Maria because it was a little too ethnic to Saint Marie. Okay, so she's identified as white on her birth certificate. By the way, she tried to say that there was no record of her birth on the Piepot Reserve because either there was a fire, she said, or there were just no records. No, if you were born on reserve, and she actually said, I was born in the Craven Hospital. The Saskatchewan government, by the way, real heroes in this story, because the Saskatchewan government's like, yeah, there was no hospital in Craven there. There was no, during those years, there was no incidents of destruction of any sort of records happening during that period. Fire, flood, nothing. We have all those records. We have all the adoption records. She does not appear. They just like completely debunked all of this. Her family, her niece Heidi, by the way, also a hero in this story, because her father tried desperately to get Buffy to stop lying. He wrote, by the way, if you want to see something real weird, watch Buffy's first appearance on Sesame Street with those little kids.
I gotta go
where
back.
their kids are like, are you a fairy tale Indian or a real Indian? And she's like, I'm a real Indian. And then she does something that Dr. Phil calls Duper's Delight, where she smirks at the end of her lie. Anyway,
there it is. You guys are so good, producer team.
Okay, this, like, I always thought Buffy St. Marie, her foundation never matched her face. And I was like, this woman is very wealthy. And now I know. I was like, her foundation doesn't match her arms. And like, yeah, your face is never quite the same color as your arms.
Right.
But she had this like sallow sort of weird funeral home makeup on all the time. And I always thought it was strange because I'm like, she's way wealthier than to have bad makeup like this. But her brother was an Air Force veteran, just an upstanding good guy, a commercial airline pilot after that. Nothing but good to his children, from what I understand. Just an upstanding individual, and he didn't like his sister lying. So he wrote letters to like PBS, and he tried to set the record straight. I even think Beverly's dad tried to set the record straight. And what happened was Beverly Santa Maria wrote and threatened her brother. And said, in a handwritten note, which matches her handwriting, and in a legal letter saying, we'll sue you for defamation. And this was like a high price LA lawyer.
Right.
Because she was like at the height of her stardom then.
Yeah.
And basically said, her handwritten letter, which the niece now showed CBC, said, if you go public, I will tell everybody that you're a pedophile.
Oh gosh, and can you imagine?
Yeah. And so, you know what? When I see the lengths that Buffy St. Marie went to silence her family, I hope her family's watching. For me, this speaks to the value of these people, that they were so good that Buffy knew they could not be bought by her wealth. She had to do something more evil to them than that, because they could not be. Yeah, well, she knew that these were the kind of people who could not be bought off with a house or a vacation or a car or a money or a trust fund. She had to do something else more evil to destroy them, and that's what she did. And her brother went to look at her makeup. Beverly Santa Maria.
How much money has she made off of this lie? Music, look at it all. Oh my gosh.
Okay, and then she says,
I'm glad the truth came out while she's alive, though.
Me too.
Right?
And then she says, I don't know where I'm from. I don't know where. Well, I saw your birth certificate, Bev. Sorry.
We know where you're from, though.
Yeah, but then she says, it doesn't matter because I just know I'm Cree. And I was adopted into the Piapot First Nation by this family when I was in my 20s. Okay, but would that family have adopted you if you actually told them you were just some basic white lady from outside of Boston? Probably not. They thought that they were adopting somebody taken from them in the 60s scoop. This is another atrocity. She said she was a 60s scoop survivor. So what, they scooped her in her 20s? Like, Beverly, you were born in the 40s. The 60s scoop did not happen until the late 50s into the 60s. So she would have to have been 60 scooped in her 20s. They thought, this family thought they thought that they were readopting somebody snatched from their community and not some grifting white lady from outside of Boston who attached herself to the American Indian movement because it was popular, sort of coincided with the hippie stuff that was happening at the time. And so that's what she did.
She played everybody. She played everybody.
She's on a stamp. She's on a stamp. She has the Order of Canada. Oh my Lord, get this. She helped develop Cree language programs that are used in school. She doesn't even speak Cree. I think the only Cree I've ever heard the woman speak. Look at her and just the mockery. Like, all of this is a costume. She's still denying it. You know what I want to see?
She's nowadays you can identify.
Yeah, you know what? I want a piece of her hair still attached to a feather for all I care. And let's do a swab with Heidi Santa Maria, the hero of this story, who's finally sticking up for her dad.
Yeah.
She met the queen.
See what's going on.
This is just like crazy.
Look at this.
You know what? Beverly Santa Maria.
That guy in the middle knows. Look, the guy in the middle, he knows what's up.
He knows. He's like, who's this lady in this costume? She's like, earned her village person costume, got her all the way onto a stamp in Canada, hosting CBC specials because she's Canadian. She's not. She's born in the United States. And she's on a stamp. Like, it's so outrageous. But Buffy, you want to put this to bed? You want to prove me wrong? Swab, mouth swab, you and Heidi. And we'll see. We'll see. Heidi looks like you, Buffy. She just has better foundation neck match than you do. Anyway. Yep.
Oh, man.
This poor
Crazy,
woman.
man. I'm not surprised.
Imagine
Nothing
being
surprises
her
me
real
anymore.
family. Imagine being her real family.
This whole time, for years, they've known this.
Well, they knew don't
and they've
tangle.
been trying
They
to
know-
tell people too.
Yeah, but also Buffy St. Marie is apparently quite vindictive and evil. So who knows? Anyways, thank you
Okay,
for
I think we have
going with
some
me on
live
that
chat.
rant.
Oh no, that's good. I'm glad you brought it up because I didn't know much about it. So, okay. So what do we have here? Oh no, that is.
We have Kane and Mark. I've got Kane's. I see Kane's.
Okay.
If I could read that
Go
one.
for it.
Kane and Mark gives us $5. Says he bought my ticket to Rebel News Live. By the way, Rebel Live coming up. What date is that?
I want to say November 17th, but
I think
maybe
it's right
that's my
after the
flight.
Ben Shapiro event. I'm looking right now. But anyways, he bought his ticket to the Rebel News Live event. Thank you. It is November 18th.
18th. Okay, I'm flying on the 17th.
In Calgary. Yeah. And it's in Calgary, and he says there's no venue in the ticket. It says Southeast Calgary. Yes, we'll let you know closer to the date. That's for your
That's
own
on
good,
purpose.
Kane.
That's for all of
Yeah.
our own good. But it's going to be
Including
awesome. So glad you got your ticket.
Including that of the venue. So yes. Also, those of you at home who are hemming and hawing about, oh, will I go to the Rebel Live event? I'm not sure if I want to get tickets. Get tickets immediately, because if you leave this to the last minute, you're not going to get to go, and then you're going to have to watch it online. There are online tickets, so if you're not in Alberta or if you're not traveling to Alberta to come to it, you can get an online ticket, but it is so much more fun in person, and you're going to meet a bunch of like-minded people. And by like-minded, I don't mean ideologically exactly the same. I mean people who want to allow you to think however you think without being molested by the state or your neighbors. But you'll meet a bunch of us. We've got great speakers. It's like a freedom convention for a whole day. And there's great food and lots of rebel personalities and other celebrities in the freedom movement will be mixing and mingling there. So it's just going to be a lot of fun. Anyways, was it rebelnewslive.ca? Is that right, Olivia? We have so many URLs. Like Canada's largest.
It was really good last year. I really enjoyed it.
Okay, Olivia's going to get the URL for me. Yeah, we're like
Perfect.
Canada's largest holder of URLs. So forgive me if some of them
We
slip my
literally are.
mind from time to time. It's Ezra's addiction. He doesn't smoke. He doesn't drink. He just buys URLs. It's still probably cheaper than smoking and drinking. We've got, Olivia. Okay, yes, I was rebelnewslive.com. I wasn't wrong. Rebelnewslive.com. Get your tickets. Perfect. And we'll see you there. Fraser McBurney, $5. Memories.
Fraser.
As a boy, yeah. Those of you who don't know, I'll give you the history of Fraser. Fight the Fines recidivist from Hamilton, Ontario. Although the way he likes to protest, he is probably an Albertan way down deep in his soul. But don't lie about your birth certificate.
Yeah, like Fluffy.
Don't be like Bluffy. Anyways, from Hamilton, he got some tickets during the course of the pandemic for Fighting for Freedom. The Democracy Fund was able to help him, and he loves his cap locks because he's enthusiastic about communicating with us, and we are with you. So Fraser says, memories. As a boy living in Montreal on Sunday, all stores were closed. We would get dressed in our Sunday best. I would go to Sunday school where I was taught stories from the good book, the Bible. I wonder, back in those days, old Beverly Santa Maria was playing on the radio on your way to church. I am obsessed with Buffy St. Marie right now. I have watched so many interviews where she's like talking about the colonial state. And I'm like, you colonized Indigenous identity, sister.
He is
like,
the biggest colonizer. Literally.
Yeah.
Oh,
Think of all the opportunities she stole from like talented Indigenous people because she could warble like a songbird. And everyone was like, oh yeah, she's lovely. But how far would she have gotten as old Beverly Santa Maria? I'm not so sure. Anyway, are those all the chats?
I think that's all the chats.
Okay, we should go out on this clip from Melanie Joly, the absolutely underqualified foreign affairs minister under Justin Trudeau, calling for a humanitarian pause and a truce in the Israel and Hamas. Yeah, in the Israel and Hamas conflict. I believe Israel didn't attack. So why are you calling on the Israelis to move forward with the truce? They have hostages that they need to get. They have hostages they need to bring home. Calling for a truce means you leave those hostages behind. No thanks, Melanie Joly. Oh, so we'll
and
show
you let
that
them know it's
out.
okay to do it again.
Right. Now we're negotiating with terrorists. So
yeah,
good job. Anyways, though, we'll wrap up the show. We'll go out on that clip. Drea, thanks for bearing with me as I talk about my latest obsession, Buffy St. Marie.
That's good.
Beverly
All right, bye,
Santa
everyone.
Maria. Bye. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. Thanks for everybody working behind the scenes at Rebel News in Toronto HQ and across the world to bring you the show whenever you want to see it. Thanks to everybody who pitched in. And as David Menzies always says, stay sane.
At this point, Canada mourns 7 dead. We're still searching for 2 who could be held hostage. 400 Canadians are trapped in Gaza. They are living in fear and despair. And as a government, we have a duty to bring them to safety. And that is why we need humanitarian pauses, a humanitarian truce in Gaza. And I've been in contact with Israel, with Qatar, with Egypt, and the US nearly every single day for the past 3 weeks. At this point, we need an agreement from all parties to get our foreign nationals out, including Canadians. All hostages must be released, and it is important to allow food, fuel, and water in Gaza. And Canada will be reaching out to more countries to join in that call. I spent the better part of this last month in Israel, Jordan, Egypt, and the UAE, overseeing our efforts to help Canadians leave the region and working with our partners to address the impacts of this conflict while finding ways to de-escalate. The region is at a very precarious moment. You can feel the weight of anxiety and pain in the streets and at the highest levels of government. While we face the immediate and urgent impacts of this crisis, we must also look forward.